Hey there everybody, Mike DiLisio with another solo mode review. Today I'm going to be taking a look at Monumental from designer Matthew Dunstan and publisher Funforge Games. Monumental is a game that has a lot going on. There's deck building, troops on a map, resource management. How does this pull it off for a solo game? Well, let's head on over to the table. I'll give you a brief rules overview and talk a little bit about how the components changed. Then we'll come back here and I'll give you my final thoughts. Okay, here we see a setup for the solo game of Monumental, which for just about every purpose is a two-player game. It's set up as a two-player game because you are playing against a AI opponent. And in this case, I have chosen to set it up so that I'm playing as the Greeks, and this is my starting units on this map, and I'm going to play against the Egyptians, and that's their units over there on that setup of the map. Couple of things I want to point out just on the front end. Number one, some of these components may or may not be representative of what you might see if you either owned or played a copy of Monumental. This is a deluxe edition. These minis are not in every copy. This playmat is not in every copy. The metal coins are not in every copy as well. But this is a copy we have, and so this, I think, will at least give you an idea. These might be replaced by cardboard chits, and this is not strictly necessary. It's nice organizationally, it's very nice, but it's not strictly necessary to play the game. All right, so as far as component changes for the solo game, really the only things that are specific to the solo game are these cards here. This would be the Automa deck, and these are the Civilization leader cards. And so since I've chosen to play against the Egyptians, what I would do is take that matching Egyptian leader card, I would shuffle it into this deck, and then replace the deck here. This is the regular multiplayer Egyptian deck. And so what I would do is I would take out their cultural cards and the warlord card, which is I think at the top here, there you go. And then all of the rest of these cards that would normally be in the starting deck for the Egyptians get removed from the game, okay? So I place the warlord card face up, these cultural cards get placed face down, and just for the purposes of this, I'm gonna keep it off to the side, just so I make sure I keep everything on camera. And then they've got their starting deck here. They're gonna start with 2 coins, just as they normally would. I start with 2 coins, all right? This particular map I chose just because it's more narrow and I thought it might fit on camera. It's a little hard to get everything in camera, but there's a whole bunch of maps. This is actually the map as represented here, the plain simple map. It's a 2-player map. There are other 2-player maps within the book. You could even create your own based on some scenario, based on some requirements they talk about in the rule book, but this is just one particular map. All right, so the game is pretty much ready to go. The only thing that I was going to show you, I'm not going to go into a heavy rules overview by any means. If you want to get a good idea on how the game plays, there's a couple of ways. Number one, you can look at the review that Tom Vassell did. I will link to that video in the description to this video. He also did a full solo playthrough as part of his solo game marathon. And that will definitely give you a good idea not only how the game plays multiplayer, but how the solo game plays as well. So this is my city area. It's a deck builder. This is my starting deck. I would put out my starting cards, generally 9, although it might be 10 if a blue card comes up. There's one right there, as a matter of fact, that would go up there, and one would go on top of it. Okay. You're just kind of filling your array. And again, if the mat wasn't here, you're just doing the same thing. This is just nice because not only does it give it visual appeal, it gives you a little bit more of a grid so that you can clearly see how that goes. All right. Now, on my turn, what I would do is I would choose 1 row and 1 column and do what the cards tell me, basically. So, for example, let's say I chose to activate this row and this column, all right? What these are going to generally do is give you access to some temporary resources that you could spend on this turn to do other things, moving troops around the map, potentially claiming territories, buying cards either from this array, which this is set up for a 2-player game with 2 rows of 3. In a multiplayer game of more than 3 or more, it would be a single row of, I believe, 5. And then these are basic buildings that are always available to you as well. All right, so here, if we look, I've gained 2 production, which would allow me at this point to buy either an archery range or a laboratory. The cost of the card is down here. That shows that it's 2 production to purchase this. That's something I could do. But let's also look at other things we have here. We've got military. So I've got 1, 2 military, and a military based on other things I've done. So gain 1 military for each fort and archery range you activated this turn. So I actually activated 2 forts here. So it would be 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'd have 4 military and 2 production that I could spend on this turn. I also have this card I can trigger. It says pay 1 basic resource to gain 1 different basic resource. So for example, if I wanted to spend one of these 4 militaries or to gain a production, I can instead buy this market card. So let's say I did that. I have 1, 2, and now 3 to pay that military to gain this. This market card would now come into my deck. It's a deck builder, but unlike a lot of deck builders, it wouldn't go into my discard. It would go to the top of my deck. And now I would still have 3 military that I could use. I can move my explorers around the map to potentially pick up some production tokens that I could use on a later turn, or even on this turn if I wanted to. I could move different troops around the map. Like this takes 2 strength to get into. I still have 2 strength left. Let's say I took one of my soldiers and brought him in there, and I was able to conquer that region, and I can either gain a gold or archive a card, which means basically keep 1 out that you can keep on the next turn. But let's say I just took a gold. Sorry if I'm getting in front of the camera here. Placed it into my area there. And now my turn is essentially done. These would now go to my discard pile. I would refill my display, and I'd be all set for my next turn. The other thing that I would do is I would look up here, and since I did buy a building from this row, I would just slide this over and refill it. But I didn't buy one from this row, so I'm going to discard the rightmost card, scoot these down, and bring another one out. This essentially is a timer for the end of the game. It starts with age 1 cards, then it will go to age 2 cards, and finally age 3 cards. And once you get to the end of age 3, that's going to be when it triggers endgame and you tally up your scores. You can make a longer game by adding in some Renaissance cards, but the regular game is 3 ages. So that's my turn. What changes for the AI? So here's how the AI is essentially going to work. We've got the AI deck right here. You're going to flip over 2 cards, 1 at a time, and evaluate the card from top to bottom, doing whatever it tells you to do on that card. So this is the first card here. It says, take the knowledge card with the highest cost. If possible, pay 2 gold to take the next highest. So let's just deal with that right off the bat. So the knowledge card with the highest cost here is a 4. So we would take that and we would put it into their play area. I'm just going to put it there for now. Okay. They do have 2 gold, so they can pay 2 gold to get the next highest cost card, which in this case are knowledge cards, not wonder cards. That was a knowledge card, right? Actually, that was not. That was a building card. I did that wrong. They should have taken one of these. So because this blue is a knowledge card. So you have to be careful about that. I'm glad I actually caught that. I'd pay 2 gold to get the next highest. I would get this card as well. Now, here it says, if architectural. So what that's referring to is each civilization has a specialty. And in the case of the Egyptians, they actually are architectural. It's small font there, and I'm hoping it'll come up on camera. But if you see where it says below warfare there, it says architectural. That means that the specialty of the Egyptians is architectural, and you would do what it says, because it is. Complete 1 wonder or acquire a new wonder with the lowest cost. Repeat this effect, then take the lowest cost building. So this was a huge first part of their turn. The turn's not even done for them yet. They complete 1 wonder or acquire one with the lowest cost. So These are both of the same cost. If you ever have a choice, you're going to take the one furthest from the deck. So they would take this Pyramids card. Normally, you would just basically say they're starting that card. They would need another action to progress it. But it says repeat this effect. And so they didn't have one to complete it first. They acquired one, and now they are going to complete it. This now goes into their pile, and now they've got the pyramids built in their kind of area there. All right. Then take the lowest cost building right here. So look at this. That's the first half of their turn. You flip over the next card, gain 3 gold, and it says if cultural, and they're not. So they would then gain 3 gold. Again, apologies for coming in front of the camera like that. And there you go. That's their turn. So a big turn for them right off the bat. And I'm already feeling the pressure to try to keep up with what my opponent has done. And so the game is going to play like this, back and forth. This would have gotten refilled, but you can see, again, they took a whole bunch of cards, and so this is burning through that timer, okay? The game's going to go pretty quick if they keep having turns like that, where they're going to be gaining buildings, they're going to be gaining other types of cards, they're going to be fulfilling their cultural objectives, which you're going to be trying to do the same thing as well, and you'll go back and forth until the timer runs out, and the end of game scoring is remarkably similar to the regular multiplayer game. The difference is that the Automa is going to gain an additional point for any 3 gold it has at the end of the game, and it's going to amass a lot of gold throughout the game. They also are going to be competing with you in the dominance categories as they would in the normal game. So you're competing for most knowledge, most provinces, most wonders, and most cultural policies that have been developed. And so you're competing with them in those ways, and the AI can and often will win in those dominance categories. So that's the basic overview of the solo game. Let's head back over and I'll give you my final thoughts on the game. All right, so there you had Monumental. It's a game that certainly looks like there's a whole lot going on when you look at the table presence. It looks like it would be very intimidating and hard to manage. But honestly, what it boils down to is primarily a deck builder with a little bit of manipulating those troops around the map, some resource management, and trying to be as efficient as you can on your turns. Not as complicated as it might first appear. So the first thing I want to do is talk about a few solo benchmarks, things that I tend to look for in solo games. And the first is the win condition. Is this a beat your high score variant, or is it a clear win-loss condition? And in Monumental, you are clearly playing against another opponent, an AI opponent, one civilization against another one. And I'm very glad that they did so, because in a game like this, where you've got some area majority and area control, and you're vying for resources and cards that the other players are vying for as well, it really ramps up that feeling of competition and tension that you would want to have in a game like this. If it was just simply a beat your high score variant, try to get the best score, that wouldn't feel as fulfilling as it does for a game like this to have that win-loss condition. And so very big thumbs up there. You feel that sense of battling back and forth every turn. If the AI has a particularly good turn, you feel increased pressure to have a great turn when you come up next. So no issues there with the win-loss condition. The other thing I like to talk about is setup and teardown. And I think all you would have to do is look at that opening shot on camera there of the screen, and it looks like there's a lot. And because there's a lot, there's quite a bit involved in the setup of this game. There's no two ways about it. It takes some time to get the map set up correctly, to make sure that you have everything where it needs to be, to set up the AI deck. It takes time. There's just no getting around that. However, I don't have an issue with a long setup if the game experience has a commensurate payoff. And in the case of Monumental, it absolutely does. I feel like I have played a full, robust gaming session when I'm done, and I don't feel like, man, I wish I hadn't wasted 10 minutes setting this game up, because this was over in 20 minutes and it was really not much to it. No, at the end of a game of Monumental, win or lose, you're going to feel like you were in a pitched battle. And so taking a bit of time to set it up doesn't bother me as much. There is some time to put it away as well. There's no two ways about it. you can do some things to kind of aid that setup, maybe making sure that each civilization has all of its components in one place, but that's really on you as a player to do. So the setup and teardown takes some time, but in my mind, the ratio for experience to that is perfectly good. The last thing I do tend to like to talk about are rules. How clear are the solo rules? Are they very clearly delineated? Are they well explained? And in the case of Monumental, I think that the solo rules were absolutely fine. Better than fine, they were quite good. They were in the back part of the rule book where you have other variants for the games because there are different modules that you could potentially add to the game if you choose to, and the solo module is one of those. But it doesn't feel like it was just thrown in there at the last minute. This feels very well designed and developed. It does not feel like something that was added on at the last moment. The rules are clearly laid out. I did not feel ambiguities. And in a game like this, where you can have potentially branching ideas going on as far as, well, there's two cards that could potentially fulfill that condition that the card is calling for, or there's a couple of different tiles that I could be going for here, a couple of different regions. The rulebook does a really good job of giving you a list of priorities, and it's not an arduous thing. You're not spending more time worrying about the AI's turn than your own, and that is something that is huge to me. When you've got an AI deck, an Automa deck, if you're spending more time on the AI's turn than you are on your own, that's usually a problem. And in the case of Monumental, it's not. The AI's turns are super fast. Flip over a card, do what it says. It's usually pretty clear what it's asking you to do. Then you take your turn, and you can spend as much time as you want on your turn to get that best bang for your buck. And that's what you want in a solo game like this. You want to feel like you are having the opportunity to be clever, but that you've got a viable opponent that you have to worry about. The other thing that I like is that depending on the civilization that you go up against, they're going to have that different specialty, and that can change how that AI deck is going to work. I think that's really good. So the rules, no complaints. As a matter of fact, they were quite good. All right, the overall solo experience. Well, I've alluded to a couple of the things that I think are positives for this game, and there are a lot of positives. I feel like this game does a tremendously good job of giving you that multiplayer experience. And in a game like this, a Civ game, Civ-styled game, I want to be careful because that can be a very loaded term, a civilization game. It doesn't, it's more of a civilization-themed game. But in a game like this, where you are competing against another civilization to try to be the strongest, the most culturally advanced, the most, whatever you're kind of going for, you want to feel that tension. You want to feel like you've got a viable opponent. And this absolutely does feel that way. It doesn't feel as random as a lot of these types of systems can. I mean, to some extent, there is randomness. It's a card flip. And you can't get around the fact that there are some random elements to the game. However, the game does a really good job of giving you a sense that they're doing things that are relatively intelligent. They're doing things that another opponent might actually viably choose to do as well. And that's a really impressive thing to be able to pull off. So I think that they do a really good job of kind of simulating what it would feel like to play against an actual opponent. Now, clearly an AI is oftentimes not going to be as smart as a human opponent, but there are other ways to get around that where they can kind of take double moves and spend gold. They can do things that a regular player can't to kind of mitigate the lack of a true intelligence with that artificial intelligence. So it does a really good job of that. Another thing that I think is fantastic about the solo experience for Monumental is how much replayability there is, because the different civilizations will play differently. They've got different strengths. They've got different specialties. They've got different things that they do well. And so I really like that when you play against somebody that is more aggressive, an aggressive civilization, they're going to really move across that map, and they're going to be competing to get those territories that you might want. Where if you're going against an architectural civilization, they're going to be gaining the buildings. They're going to be building the wonders. And so you have to adapt to that. And depending on what strategy you as a player might like to play, you can kind of tailor your experience by choosing the different civilizations that you play against. I think that that is fantastic. I think that the The game just in general has a lot of things going for it. I really enjoy the art. The component quality, especially in the deluxe edition that you see here in this video, is through the roof. Fantastic component quality. I think that the time to play is really good as well, because while you feel like you're having a very, as I said, robust gaming experience, it doesn't feel overlong. It doesn't outstay its welcome. You feel the pressure of that deck burning along, and you've got to get done what you need to get done. You've got to get those cultural cards out. You've got to get your wonders built. You've got to really try to vie for those dominance positions so you can get those end game points. And that deck is running ever thinner. And so that sense of progression is good. The game is over at just the right time, I feel. Not too long, not too short. If you do want the game to go longer, there are ways to do that, as I mentioned earlier, by adding in the Renaissance Age cards as well. But overall, I think that Monumental is an outstanding solo game. Really well done on just about all accounts. You do have to account for a little bit of setup and teardown, but again, for the experience it provides, I feel like it is very commensurate to the amount of time that you spend spinning it up and tearing it down. So, all that being said, I give Monumental an 8.5 and my seal of excellence. If it looks like something you're interested in, hopefully you can check it out. Thank you so much for your time as always, and have a great day.